Good evening, everyone. I've got two microphones. I'm really not sure what to do. So forgive me as I kind of go through this. First off, before we talk about anything specific about why we're here, I just want to take the opportunity and tell you thank you. I don't know if you guys know this, but public schools and public education needs more of this. Our community needs more of this. It needs the involvement of the community. It needs the representation of families. It needs the advocacy on behalf of your students every single day. So let's not let this be a one-time thing. Let's continue to have you guys in the crowd, continue to speak your beliefs, and continue to hold people like me in a public position accountable. So I'm a firm believer on starting on time and respecting your time. So what we're going to do is I've got a little presentation here for you guys. If you'll let me go through it, I'll kind of walk you through it, and then we'll have a little Q&A at the end to where you guys can ask me questions, and I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. I will give a little precursor that some of the questions that you're going to have, I won't have an answer for because we haven't made the decision for a 4-day school week. So there's a lot of questions. Well, what will it look like? Well, we really don't know until we actually implement it, okay? So I'll try to do my best. I'll tell you what we've seen from other schools that are doing it and give you all the information that I can. So thank you for coming tonight. So the biggest question is, why are we here? So recruiting educators has become a priority for every school district in the state of Texas, charter, public, and private. While larger, more urban school districts have felt the impact of the teacher shortage, the problem has only become exacerbated in our small rural districts. So earlier this year, we put together what's known as the Spearman ISD Teacher Retention and Recruitment Committee. How do we get people here, and how do we keep them here? So one of the things that we did is we began developing strategies to look at and increase the recruitment to the district, along with retaining the current staff. So here are some of the steps that we've taken. We've utilized the data gathered from staff, parent, community surveys to assist in our process to continue our growth and monitoring. So when we send out the parent surveys, we really are reading them. We really are looking at the information that you give to us to help guide the decisions made in the district. Secondly, we started incorporating our needs assessment into our campus meetings. This is replacing the instructional forum. So a little bit of background on the instructional forum. Ms. Ramon, who's our teacher mentor coordinator, she visits the campuses at the end of the year, and she has one-on-ones with campus teachers to really look at the growth measure. Hey, what can your administrators and this school district, what are they doing well? Okay? We call it a SWOT analysis, SWOT. We look at our strengths, we look at our weaknesses, our opportunities, and then the threats to the school district, specifically as you're looking at culture, okay? So we're going to start doing those needs assessments. Instead of having somebody else come in and do it, we're going to do it on site with our staff. Then what we used to have is we used to have a teacher's voice. Those were representatives from each campus that met with the superintendent. I like being on campus, and last week we did the first one. It's called the Campus Connections with the Superintendent. I actually sit down with every staff on that campus and have a conversation. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What can we do to change? So that's something new that we're trying as well. Then we began to examine initiatives from other school districts to see if they would fit within our community, within our district, and determine the impacts on student learning outcomes, teacher workload, most importantly, school culture, and overall community well-being. And when I say that we've looked at initiatives, I'll just give you a little bit of breakdown. 2 years ago, I went to the West Texas A&M Teacher Recruitment Job Fair at West Texas A&M, which is the educational source for the Panhandle of Texas. Dallas ISD, Fort Worth ISD, Houston ISD, Austin ISD, all in the same building as us in the Panhandle. And when I turned back and looked at our table, it was great. It reflected who we were. But when I looked at Dallas ISD's, there's a banner there that says $25,000 sign-on bonus. for a brand new teacher. So when I say that we're looking at initiatives, we are looking at initiatives to maintain and be competitive in the marketplace of professional educators. And so those are the initiatives that we're looking at. What are other school districts doing? How are they handling discipline? How are they doing this? I went to Austin last week. It didn't go well. Okay? They're not listening to us. That's a side note. Okay? We can have a personal conversation about that. But one of the things that came out of it is maybe we need to talk to the community. Maybe we need to bring up the idea of a 4-day school week. And so that's one of the things that we did. We put it on there, we thought it out, and we said, okay, if we're going to do this, how do we do it the correct way? I don't want to just throw something at you and not put any time, effort, and energy into it. So that's what we've done. So we've also looked at increasing our district's presence at the job fairs to attract potential employees. I actually have board members, one that's going to Texas A&M to their job fair. Whoop, right? Because we're going to do what Dallas ISD is. We're going to send people down and sell Spearman ISD in the community of Spearman to those people. Because there's something that we have that Dallas ISD does not. Okay, and that's culture. So let's get you a little bit of information. So what you see on the left, and this is new, what you see on the left is what's known as the TAPER report. This is the Texas Academic Performance Rating. They have our demographics from our district. So basically they look at our students, they look at our teachers, they look at how we academically perform. Is there a laser? So if you will look down here, teachers by years of experience. So this was at the end of last year, 2024. 6 teachers were brand new, 6.9. 18.7 teachers had 1 to 5 years of experience. No, that's percent. 18.7 is the count. 6 to 10 years experience, 19.4. 11 to 20, 13.7. 21 to 30, 9.1. Over 30, 5. So teachers that are within the retirement age at the end of last year were 14 teachers. In the spring of 2024, 9 district staff retired from this district. Combined, those teachers had 282 years of experience in public education. Take those 9, subtract it from those 13, and add in a little bit of percentage of that 13.7, and what we have in the next 2 to 3 years is a gap that we're not going to be able to fill. And we're going to lose more experience in the classroom because we're in the panhandle and we're competing for teachers just like everybody else. So also at the end of this year, when I came in, we had 4 of those teaching positions. Their jobs were posted. They were posted in the spring. 4 of those teaching positions were not filled by the start of the year. So there are 4 teachers in our district that we did not hire. We couldn't find anybody. Nobody applied for them. We didn't interview anybody. 2 teaching positions, we were lucky. That's a total of 6 teaching positions. 2 teaching positions, we were lucky to get a half-time retired teacher. Now, a retired teacher has a requirement they can't work more than 92 hours, which means their workload is extremely small. They deserve it. They're retired, right? They need to wear a shirt that says, "I survived public ed." Okay? So, as we start to look at this, public education and having teachers enter, we have a big issue. And we're going to continue to have a big issue because there's not people going into public education. So we have to maintain our competitive edge. So let's look at what we currently do. This is our current calendar, 24-25. If you look on this calendar, there are a total of 36 weeks that your students are in our buildings. Those 36 weeks equate to 171 instructional days, okay? Out of those 36 weeks, 23 are traditional 5-day school weeks. The other 13 are 4.5 and below, with 2 of them being 3.5 days and below. Now, these weeks do not also contain spring break, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Okay, so those numbers aren't in here. So it's important when we start to have this conversation, just to give you some base information. House Bill 2610 was passed in 2015. That bill was written by Ken King from Canadian. House Bill 2610 amends the Texas Education Code, that subsection 2501. Used to, students had to be in school by law 180 days a year. And what Ken King said is we need to change days to minutes. So now we have instructional minutes versus days. So when we're talking about students, you're going to hear me talk about minutes, okay? Now there is a mandate in the state of Texas. Every school district has to have kids in the school for 75,600 instructional minutes, okay? It does not constitute days. It says you must have 75,600 minutes of instruction. So as we start to have this conversation, even with a change in school week, the base requirement is still we have to have 75,000. That is kids in their seat being taught by teachers. So what is our objective? Our objective is Spearman ISD staff, along with the community of Spearman, will critically assess the potential impact, both positive and negative, in implementing a 4-day school week. I need to make this just a tad bit bigger. So I'm going to tell you a story. I met with Spearman ISD teachers on February 14th. So we're very methodical. This is thought out. We're not just throwing this up against the wall. We had this meeting, this town hall, those QR codes ready on February 14th. And I want to tell you why. Because teachers can't keep a secret. I knew the moment that I brought those teachers in here and said, hey, let's talk. Somebody was under the table with the cell phone. Hey, guess what we're doing? Right? So I put it in big red letters when I met with the staff. Okay? And I'm putting it in big red letters as I meet with you and as I meet with the Hispanic Advisory Council as well. Before we begin, it is imperative that we all understand and communicate our purpose here today. Spearman ISD is researching and conducting feedback sessions to assist the district committee in presenting all information to the Spearman ISD Board of Trustees. Our conversations today do not mean that a 4-day school week has been approved and will be implemented. There is a process in this in which we collect the data, we visit with staff, we visit with our operations team. Last night we held a town hall for Spanish speakers, and then tonight the town hall for you. And we will gather all of that data, pardon me, and then I will present that data to the school board. So what have we done so far? So when we started talking about the 4-day school week, I said, hey, we've got to look at those people around us to see if it's even feasible, right? Let's get some insight into what's happened. In Region 16, which is basically just north of Lubbock all the way to the top of the Panhandle, there are a total of 8 schools who are already 4-day school weeks. Now, traditionally, those 8 schools are all 1A schools. They're 6-man schools, right? They're usually K through 12, okay? Still, let's get the information. Let's ask them what's kind of going on. So we sent out an email to every superintendent from those schools and said, hey, will you do us a favor and answer us some questions? We're just trying to get some answers. And so out of those 8 schools, I got 3 responses, okay? And so I would like to present that information to you. The first question is, how much extra time was added to your calendar/daily schedule? And so what those 3 schools reported was our bell schedule looks at 7:25 to 4:10. One is from 7:40 to 4:10, and one is from 7:30 to 4:05. So there are some differences even amongst the 4-day school calendars of start time and end time, okay? What are your requirements for teachers and staff regarding professional development days? Some of those districts said, hey, everybody's off on Friday, but 3 of those Fridays we bring staff in for professional development. One of them said, hey, we add additional professional development days, the others are off. So they've got theirs scattered. Once a month, they come in, staff do for professional development. And then the others said, hey, or pardon me, switch those. The other school says 1 Friday a month our staff come in, okay? How has it impacted your community? Daycare, school lunch, work schedules, after school, Head Start. All of those smaller towns don't provide a Head Start. They do not have after school that's offered. They do not offer lunches on the days that they're off. And for the most part, their community supports it. Okay? Have you seen a positive or negative impact on ADA? Let me explain a little bit on what ADA is. The state of Texas funds our school district in two different ways. The first thing, you got to love this. They're going to let you pay the bill first, right? That's through local taxes, okay? What they do is they look and say, hey, you have this many staff, this many kids, these are the type of kids that you have, this is how much it should cost you to operate your school. So they say, pardon me, let's say that number's 10 million, okay? They say, okay, let's go to your taxpayers first. Your taxpayers raise $8 million, okay, based off of the taxable value, then the state comes in and subsidizes the other $2 million to meet your budget, okay? Larger school districts, if it's 10 million and their property value exceeds that, the state comes in and says, hey, we're going to recapture some of that property value. That's going to go to the rainy day fund, right? We're going to take that because you guys are property rich, okay? So let's say we're supposed to get 10 million from the state, okay? And our attendance rate, this is why attendance is so important. Our attendance rate, if we have 95% attendance across the district, that means kids in the seat that we are serving, on an average, the state only sends us 95% of that 10 million. That's how we're funded. As a superintendent, when your child's not in that desk, I don't get to turn off 5% of the lights. I don't get to cut off 5% of the food that's already made before your students get there. I have to operate at 100% capacity no matter what students are sitting in that seat. So that's why ADA is important to us. So what is the impact on local school districts that are going to 4-day school weeks? Positive. Parents are more intentional because there's 4 days. Really haven't seen an impact, not a significant impact on ADA, okay? What impact has it had on extracurricular activities? Coaches like Friday off, haven't really seen an impact. Can be challenging to get kids to attend games. Has it helped in hiring and retaining staff? Staff love it, but we haven't seen an impact. I've brought in teachers from larger districts, and they've taken pay cuts to come to our district because of the 4-day school week. And then have you seen a positive or negative impact on academic performance? There's one, and I'll just tell you the school, Channing, Texas. I talked to the superintendent, and she said, our teachers weren't ready for a 4-day school week. They didn't know how to teach on a 4-day school week, our first year. But we figured it out. And so that's what she says right there. We weren't prepared for content, right? So the state of Texas says, hey, this U.S. history class is supposed to, I taught U.S. history. I have to teach the entirety of World War II in 10 days. That's called our scope and sequence, or our YAC. By elongating the day and by condensing the week, we got to tweak that a little bit to make sure that we're still covering the content that is required by the state in the time frame that we're allowed. The other schools said there was a small positive impact, and then we'll get into STAR tutorials and how they were positive. One of the other things that we did is I found this article right here, the winter 22-23 issue of the Classroom Teacher by Texas Classroom Teachers Association. They published an article in 2022. They basically listed every school that was in a 4-day school week. Now that year alone in 2022, there were 27 school districts that made a change to go to a 4-day school week in the state of Texas. For your context, there are 1,200 school districts in the state, okay? 5.5 million students, 1,200 school districts. In 2023, 27 school districts changed that year alone. Today in the state of Texas, there are 115 school districts that are 4-day school weeks. This research was done by Baylor University. Out of those 115 schools, only one has gone back to a 5-day school week. So that's just information for you guys. But what I said, and the number one thing that we talked about with the teacher retention and the staff is, what does it do to academics, right? How is this going to impact our students and how they perform? So what I did is I went through that article, and then we searched and we broke it down to schools that were similar in size to us. And so what you'll see on the left is you will see the name of the school. They are a 2A or 3A classification with UIL. This date right here is the date that they actually started their 4-day school week. their population of their school, that says we're at 716, we're at 676 in Spearman this year. Low SE, that's socioeconomic, okay? So if they're low, that means that percent of their population fall below, okay? And then what you see to the right of that is there's a 3-year longitudinal study. And these are all tested subjects, so all STAR tests and all INVA-course exams. And the measure on that is, in the state of Texas, there's approaches, meets, and masters, okay? Approaches is the passing score, okay? We always elevate to the meets and masters, and that's the reason we're an A-rated school district. But that's what this is based off of, is approaches. What percentage of your kids passed all subjects? And so what you can see is we went through and we said, okay, let's take Pewitt, for example. They started in 22, 23. So what we have to do is we have to go over here to 23. And we have to say, was there a significant impact on the academic outcomes the year before or the year after? What you can see with Pewitt CISD is they did increase their STAR scores, and then they stayed the same. Now that seems pretty good. But let's go down to Petrolia, 21, 22. They increased their STAR scores the year of, and then they dropped. So when we look at these, there's something that's important. I would love to sit here in front of you today and say, hey, 100%, I promise you there will not be an academic drop for our students. But I can't do that. And I can't give you the information because right there in the middle, in 2023, the state of Texas said, hold on, time out. We're going to change the test. And so this information that's up here is not apples to apples, okay? It's apples to oranges. That test that they took in 22 is not the same test that they took in 23. The tests are supposed to be harder. There's more expository writing in there, especially 3rd grade and above, to where they have to write sentence structure. And they are incorporating writing in every subject from 3rd grade all the way up to sophomores, okay? So the test has changed. The one thing that is great, though, is if you look down here, I took our numbers, and if you look at our numbers, now I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not happy with these, okay? The staff that are there are not happy. The teachers that are in those classrooms are not happy. We want better. We always want better. But we took a small little dip getting used to the new test. The rigor's going up, and we are performing 1 point below where we were prior. That means that the teachers in your classrooms are doing a good job of working with your students to get them ready. Now, these results don't equate to academic outcomes for students. It's a snapshot, right? So as we start to look at this thing going through, if those decisions are made down the road, my commitment to you and my staff's commitment to you is we will always include transparency as it relates to how we perform. And we will not let this impact what we do in the classroom or how we do. We're going to teach your kids just as hard tomorrow as we did yesterday, and the same every year after that. Also, just want to point out in 2021, there's an article in Education, Finance, and Policy that over 24 states across the United States, there are 1,600 plus school districts that are on a 4-day school week as well. We've started to see this go into higher ed as well. So we did a timeline for our planning. So on the 14th, we met with all staff, and then we immediately sent out those invitations for the town hall meeting. Again, teachers with phones, right? So let's get that information out, tell people, hey, this is what we're doing. So that was on the 14th. Then on the 25th, well, let me just tell you a little bit about the staff meeting. So what we did in the staff meeting, we brought everybody from the district in, the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the front office. They all sat in here. We had the same presentation for them. And then we asked them a series of questions, and in those groups that they were in, they began to answer those questions. There were 84 staff here that day, and out of those 84, 65 on that, hey, if you had to make a decision, how would you go today? 65 out of 84, or 77%, voted to switch to a 4-day school. The 25th, I met with all operations. These are our custodians, our maintenance, our transportation, everyone who supports the teachers in their classroom. There were 22. went through the same presentation. 22 out of 22 voted yes. Last night, we had where'd we go? Right here. We had our Spanish town hall meeting. We'll talk a little bit more tonight about the QR codes on the wall and how we can gather your input as well in just a minute. Tonight we're doing the English town hall. We will also be sending, one of the things that we did is it's important for me to know when you give feedback that you were here and were presented the information, that you are making your suggestions and feedback based off of the information that you've heard from us. So those QR codes are going to tell us that you were in attendance tonight. Does that make sense? Then we will submit another community survey out on the website for anybody who was not able to attend, because there may be some questions that we didn't get to hear in person, and we need to address those as well. On the 17th of March, on the 6th of March, we will present this to our Hispanic Advisory Committee. We have a Hispanic Advisory Committee. That's what they do. They advise us. They're an important part of this community. They make up 68% of our student population. And so we're going to present the information that we've gathered to them. And then on the 17th of March, I will put the action and discussion item to present the data to Spearman ISD School Board as it relates to 4-day school week. And that's where I hand the reins over to those community representatives of yours as far as the decision making. On the 17th, the board could take action. They could take no action on it. They could literally come to me and say, Mr. Lehman, thank you for gathering all this information. We're going to wait. We're not sure that this is the right time. They could flat out say, no, we're not doing this. Or they could say yes. Based upon the response that they give, our school committees have calendar committees from every school that puts together a calendar, and then we present those calendars to the district committee. Do we have anybody in here, a parent who's on that district committee, the DEIC? Ms. Sonnenberg. We've got business representatives, we've got student representatives, we've got parents on there, as well as admin, teachers, operations, right? Paraprofessionals. So once they determine what they're going to do on the 17th, they'll give us a direction and we'll drive in that direction. The calendar committees will. If they say, hey, we want to go to a 4-day school week, this is what we feel is in the best interest of our community and school district, then we will present those campus calendar committees. We'll start working on a 4-day calendar. I'm just going to tell you right now, we do not have a 4-day calendar, okay? We haven't developed one. We're not going to develop one until we get the action from the board. Then on the 14th, we will present the approved calendar, approved by the DEIC. We will present that calendar to the school board for them to go ahead and take action on, and then that becomes the official calendar for 2025-2026. So when we got our teachers together, these are the 4 questions that we asked them to consider. What do you believe would be the most significant benefits of a 4-day school week? What do you believe would be the most significant challenges, of a 4-day school week? How would a 4-day school week impact your personal and professional life? And do you have any additional comments, concerns, or suggestions regarding a 4-day school week? So these are the reflections from the staff. Pros: teacher retention and morale, less burnout, staff and students, better attendance, increased planning time, student mental health, professional development, extracurricular days, like those days when those teams miss school to go participate in extracurricular, increased student concentration and productivity. What are the cons? Daycare for parents, lunches and snacks for students. Can I address something before we move further? I will not go to a 4-day school week if I'm not allowed to feed kids on Friday. I won't do it. We have kids that rely on us for breakfast and lunch, and so this isn't even a question for me. And I've had those conversations with board members. We will continue to take care of the kids that need to be fed. The other cons: students need a routine. There's reduced days of instruction. How do we meet all the T's? Getting students focused after 3 days off. The longer days for younger students. Longer days could add to negative behavior. Extracurricular participation. What are your questions and concerns? How does this affect the start and end of school? Would daycare cafeteria still be open? How will this affect the school budget? How do we provide tutorials for students? Social and emotional concerns. How does this impact extracurricular participation? What do you guys see as being the greatest benefit? Teacher retention and recruitment. Attendance. It provides days for medical appointments so that they don't have to miss instruction. Teacher and student burnout. Planning days, increase student engagement. And then for the teachers, through their eyes, increase family time with their own families. Greatest challenge. Childcare for younger children. Long days for young children. Aligning lessons to meet the new timeline. Meals for our students. Finding a schedule that suits everyone. Extracurricular, getting students to come in on their day off. And then the comments. We believe it would be a positive move for staff and students. We feel it would look different based on ages and campuses. One team even made a suggestion, hey, let's do Mondays off in the fall and Fridays off in the spring. Breakfast and lunch for students in need must be a priority. And then the other suggestion to round it out was, hey, let's try it for 2 years and then regroup to discuss it later. Sorry, Lexi, we were talking about getting sick and now I can't breathe. Get a shot. If y'all go home and you're sick tomorrow, it's not my fault, okay? So what I would like to do, because the reason that you guys came here is, A, you have an opinion. You should have an opinion. I need to hear your questions, concerns, frustrations, support, whatever. I am going to ask that you do it in a professional, adult manner, right? There is not a decision being made here tonight. I am simply gathering evidence to present to the board. We do have board members here. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. Last night we made them stand up. I don't think I'll make them do that, but thank you guys for doing that. Ms. Pipkin actually serves on our teacher retention and recruitment, so we actually have a board member who comes in and helps us with this. So I will have Ms. Jackson. We'll stand up and we'll have her bring you the microphone, and you can ask a question, and I will answer it to the best of my ability based off of not having a calendar, if that makes sense. Everybody good? Okay.
Any questions?
Can you hear me in the back even though I don't have a mic? Okay. No, that saying yes, sir is not my response. I'm just acknowledging. Yes, sir. I'm acknowledging. So what we've seen, Roger, is we've seen a bunch of variables in calendars, right? Well, you can't hear me? Can I have the mic then? Here, I'll move around. Let's do this. We'll change things up. I got you. Thank you. Good job, Ms. Jackson. Appreciate it. Yes. Hey, y'all didn't do that when I stood up. That's unfair. We need to talk. So Roger, what we've seen in looking, so one of the things that we did, so the one that I showed you that's got all the schools that were on there that we were looking at, so I actually went to their website and I printed every school's calendar just to give some suggestions of what does this look like. And then you can't really develop a calendar until you develop a bell schedule, right? Because remember we said these are based off of minutes and not days. So the minutes is when is the first bell, when is the last bell. And so you kind of have to have your daily minutes figured and then you develop your days. So what we've seen is we've seen some variables to where they go at 7:40 to 4:10. We've seen some that go as early as 7:25. But also that coexist with that are those calendars that some of them are a true 4-day school week from the day the school begins until the day ends. One of the questions that was up there was routines for littles. So we've seen school calendars that actually say, hey, we are going to transition. They call it a hybrid. We are going to transition to 4 days, but not until 3 to 4 weeks at the beginning of the school year to get those young ones in routine. Therefore, reducing the total number of minutes that you have to have per day. What we have talked about and what's a little bit, it's very easy to do is, especially for teachers, like when you talk about we're extending your day. An 8-period day with 40-minute extension, and then you got to talk about transition in between. You're really talking about adding roughly 5 to 7 minutes per class period. So when we talk about routines for youngers, your kid's not going to be in algebra for an hour and a half. They're going to be in there roughly, what are our minutes now? Sally, 45 per class? 45? So we would be looking at around 52 minutes per class. So as far as extracurricular participation, we do have early school coming in. And that's one of those things, it's like, I would love to be able to tell you, hey, this is when they're coming, this is when they're going. And the concern of being, hey, extracurricular, they are coming in early, they are leaving late. Our athletics being in 8th period doesn't really help with junior high because their athletic period is earlier, but they have an increased time during the athletic period too. I know it's not much, 5 to 7 minutes, but that is one of the things to consider. But until you really kind of get the bell schedule, until we say, hey, do we want a hybrid model? Do we want to go full 4-day? That's kind of a tough question of when will it start and when will it end? One of the things that we saw also in the calendars, right? On our calendar, we have 171 days. Traditional, the hybrid model that we saw, those kids go to school 161 days. So they start traditionally, this is one of the questions, like when do they start, right? What we've seen is traditionally they start roughly 4 to 5 days before we do on our current schedule, and they end 4 days after us. So it's kind of counterintuitive that we go, hey, wait, they start earlier and they finish later, but they go 9 days fewer than we do. That's the benefit of the 4-day school week. And also put in there, remember, 75,600 minutes of seat time. It's a mandate. So I know I didn't exactly answer, but that's one of those that I really can't until we have a bell schedule. But that will be taken into account. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have seen, I will tell you, we've seen one, I visited with one superintendent from Elkhart. They're a 4-day school week. I visited with him this week in Austin. And he said their mandate is they don't send homework. So we've increased the time for you in your class. Now, I'm not going to lie. It's gonna take some, there was a bug there. Did you see it? I'm not scared of bugs. I just don't like tasting them, okay? It's going to take some adjustment on our behalf, but there's also going to take a commitment on your behalf as community members and parents. I will tell you as the superintendent, we have an increase in discipline. We have an increase in attendance issues. If we know that we are increasing the minutes and shortening the days, then what we have to do is as a community and as a school district of saying, we're not going to tolerate disruptions in the classroom. We know that we don't want to be sending them home. We know that we don't want them homework because we're extending that. But dadgummit, the 55, 57 minutes I have them, you better be locked in and we better not have an issue. And if we go to a 4-day school week, I'm going to instruct my administrators, if there's a student in there interrupting the other 19 kids in that class, that they go. So that should help answer that question too. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yes, sir. And that's the thing too, as a community is I can speak on behalf of, so we have a very large population of our student body that work, especially in the high school. Actually kind of surprised me when I came up here how many of our students actually work. And I think what we see is a large majority of them work because they're trying to supplement family income. And that has a direct negative effect on your extracurricular participation because they don't have a choice. They got to go to work, right? They want to play football. We've had some kids who played football all the way up until their junior year. But now that I can work, I got to go work and make money. So that's really one of those things that if it's an extracurricular, one of those things that's outside of the school day for us, we can have some kind of control over how those things are done. And that's why, like Coach Lozano and those guys, they're already having conversations like, if we do this, how do we do this? On the days off that kids aren't there, how do we have football practice? How do we do basketball? How do we do this? And so it's kind of the same thing with them. It's kind of difficult for us to kind of plan without having a plan of what that looks like. But that is true. Like families are going to have to make that adjustment. If they get home at 4, which is really at the end of the day for the general student is only about, 30 minutes different? I know dismissal, the last students at the elementary school, usually 3:50, 3:45. So 3:45 at those last younger kids. So any other questions? Please. Yes, ma'am.
We do have a daycare here.
Yes, ma'am.
It goes up until.
So there is a priority for that because while it is a public daycare, can I borrow that real quick? So she was asking about daycare, and we have the Little Links daycare, and Miss Mary Beth is here. And correct me if I'm wrong on anything. So board members, forgive me. One of the things that's difficult about the daycare and the dedication that Spearman ISD has done for the teachers and some of the community members is we absorb all the cost of that daycare. that daycare doesn't necessarily make the district money. It doesn't even pay for itself. That's something that a lot of you don't know. That's a benefit that we offer to our teachers to help in teacher retention and recruitment, but it's also a benefit that we extend to hospital workers. They've got a certain amount of seats in there that they help with the cost that we reserve for them. And then once those seats aren't filled, then we are open to the general public. So there's a priority list on that. It starts with the SISD staff, and then it goes to Hansford County Hospital District, because they pay to reserve seats in there, and then it goes to the general public. Do you kind of have a breakdown of where you're at on that, Miss Mary Beth?
We'd have to grow a lot. I don't have any, and that is my
for the people that needed the talker on the days that they were.
That's one of my main concerns is the community and childcare, and there's not a lot of babysitters or other centers besides the daycare. Where I am very concerned of where all these little kids are going to go.
Well, yeah, I think so. The important thing here for me is as the one responsible for leading the district too, is remember 36 weeks, only 23 of those are full. So our daycare, Mary Beth's concern, yeah. So it's a viable question. So Mary Beth's concern is, what does this look like for us, right? And we haven't really gone down that road yet because we're not quite sure. Because if one of those days are Monday, then on Mondays, Spearman ISD staff aren't coming in. The teachers aren't coming in. So the daycare availability on that day, there could be some transition. I will tell you there's also some secondary conversations that have happened, and not on behalf of the school, but I was made aware of them, that there is a possibility of some local churches who were saying, hey, what a great opportunity for Mother's Day out, right? And so I think that's the one variable there too, because I hear the daycare concern. Yeah. And see, that's probably to me like one of the most difficult questions is like childcare, right? The last thing I want is a kid to be left at home. Right? That's the last thing that I want. But at the end of the day, if the community votes to go 4-day school week, then that's the 4-day school week. I think if you go back to the 80s, right, when we were in elementary school, most schools got out at 3. Our parents didn't get off work until 4 or 5 o'clock. So where did we go? That's the term latchkey, right? We went home, right? Not that I'm saying we need to go back to kids being at home. But what I'm saying is that is being dealt with on a daily and yearly basis during the summer. That's a 16-week period of where parents are finding something for those students. So it's not something that I'm saying, hey, we won't acknowledge. Here's my plan, right? Here's my plan. We've got all of this data, okay? I'm going to take the top concerns, okay? And I'm going to come up and develop strategies for the board when we do this. If you decide to do this, like what's the one concern? Hey, kids don't get to eat. There's not a strategy. We're going to stink and feed them. There's no strategy. I've already talked to my cafeteria ladies in operations. They'll say, hey, we'll do whatever. Those kids are going to get fed. Great, check mark, right? Daycare, what do we do if there are people in need? Can we work with those community centers? Is there opportunity? Mary Beth stays open like during the holiday because we service. Mary Beth, quit yelling.
The community's going to have to step up. Churches or other centers. Back when and that will have to, I think.
Yeah, so.
I think that's all.
Hold on. Okay, hold on. I like it. Hold on 1 second. All right, so one of the suggestions was, what about the girls who are, or the young ladies who are not in school actually serving as babysitters throughout that time? Those are all, look, we can go down a rabbit hole of daycare options. The problem is still going to exist, right, for parents, okay? The problem is going to exist for parents. Spearman ISD, while we do run a daycare, we are not a daycare. We do run a daycare, okay? We are a public education facility, and when our doors are open, it's to educate those kids, and that's my focus on. If we go to 4 days, I'm going to focus on education and feeding and the social and mental health of those kids in there. We will work on the daycare solution with the community. Okay? I'm just telling you, we do not have the capacity in the Little Links daycare to absorb every student who's not in school on that day. Yes, ma'am. Yes. And that's a very viable question. That's a personal question whenever it comes to your finance. Like 100%, we know that this is going to have some implication on you. And that's the one thing that makes what we're doing great is we're all looking through a different set of lenses. As the superintendent of this school, my lens is to look at Spearman ISD. And while there isn't a cost, I can't afford to replace 9 retiring teachers the way that we've been doing it. I had 9 retire and didn't fill 5 of them. So if those other 9 are going to retire within a year or two, and I continue to miss 5, you have kindergarten. How many in your pre-K classes? 16. How many in kindergarten? 17, 18. How many in second grade? Third grade? 20 each. So for me, when we start to look at that thing, and through the lens that I'm in, I understand that in kindergarten, 18 kids, having that many for one teacher, and this is the most difficult thing for me to say to all of you. What you experienced in school is not the same today. School today is not the same as it was in 1993 for Mr. Lehman. Would we all agree on that? So we have to make the choices for that. Kindergartners and pre-K students with 18 in, early education literacy is going to drop. We're going to see that across the state. As class sizes continue to get bigger, literacy rates are going to drop. Math is going to drop. And then you're going to have a natural side effect of that. They just did a press conference today in Tarrant County about the juvenile probation issue. And 80% of juvenile probation kids can't read and can't add. So as an education system, we as a community cannot rely on Austin to solve our problems. We have to take care of it ourselves. Is there going to be some shared expense? 100%. So when we look at those lenses, I want you to understand that we acknowledge that. We understand. I can't tell you how much that's going to cost. And I don't like that either. But what I can do is advocate on behalf of the district and try to maintain a public education system that best supports your kids during the days that they're there. If that makes sense. Yes, ma'am. And then I'll go you next.
Is there also some shared savings with it, like running buses one less day a week, having the lights on one less day a week? Is there some savings that you guys have looked into on that?
So as far as savings, I was very cautious whenever I did this because I didn't want, so a byproduct of this, let me just say this, it's very disgusting. We have 676 kids running around here. Guess what they all do 3 or 4 times a day, right? Where's my city manager? Hey, you want to make a deal on water? We're going to do it publicly. He has to answer. Oh, dadgummit. So 676 and then 141 staff are coming through and they're flushing that toilet at least multiple times. A natural, that's a poor choice of words, a natural byproduct is going to be where there's going to be a reduction in water, right? Our light usage, there will be a reduction in it. I'm going to throw a rough estimate out there. Our utilities cost this district roughly $350,000, $360,000 a year. So any day that those are off, our electrical bill during the year and our electrical bill during summer, massive difference, even though in summer it's hot. So a natural byproduct, yes, but it's not the intent or focus of a 4-day school week. Yes, ma'am. Yes. There were questions too. So like the operations comes to me. So the ladies in the cafeteria, right? They're on an hourly schedule. Well, how do we adapt that if they're in there? We fix their pay, right? They run a daycare on Friday. Yes. Yeah. Well, there goes any of the business savings that you were talking. So yes, naturally there will be there will be some savings as far as what constitutes that or what that looks like. The research, I haven't gone into that. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Say grades start dropping. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if all of the information comes from you guys and we collect the data and then I bring it to the board, I will ask the board to do what's known as, it's just going to be a pilot program. Let's take 2 to 3 years. Let's look at this. Okay. Let's come back as a community. Let's have another town hall and let's put true data up there. Let me put my attendance data up there. Let me put our score reports up there, right? Which I'm praying they get rid of those. But if that's the information that we have, I'm praying, okay? If that's the information we have, that's what I want to present to you. Our accountability is to you, too. So if we get down the road and they vote yes on this and it's not working, I will take it back to them. Even if we say it's a 3-year pilot, if we go a year and we see this thing starting to do this, we'll pump the brakes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Last night at the meeting, you discussed.
Yes. Great. Yes. Yes, ma'am. So and this fits in very nicely to your question too. So the administration staff, their instructional team, their leaders, they do a fantastic job, a great job. You see what they're doing. They love your kids. They're taking care of your kids. But I gave an example. If you and I work in a plant and our boss tells us, hey, you have to make 10,000 of these in 5 days, we can do it. We're going to find a rhythm and we're going to do it. But what if your boss comes to you and said, now you have to make 10,000 of these in 4 days? You're going to have to adapt. You're going to have to change, correct? You're going to have to be a little more intentional, a little more focused on what you're doing. So as we continue to focus and look at what we're doing, what we're going to do, and my promise is that we are going to build into the schedule Fridays for tutorials. So, and those will be planned on the schedule. Okay, so if we bring in a professional development day for staff, what we will do is say, hey, on this Friday from 8 to noon is targeted instruction for X, Y, and Z. Okay, if we have students with attendance issues, we can bring them in on that Friday. But it gives you guys, as parents, if we do that, an implemented day that we know that our son or daughter is going to the school to get intervention on that day. And if we do it that way, the class sizes are also smaller and it's more one-to-one. So that's kind of what we talked about. We will continue to provide tutorials for EOC and STAR. And if we have, sometimes we do Saturday school for attendance issues. So that would also be provided on a Friday too. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. Go ahead, Saul.
Didn't do it like
Can you,
kids do it. So, that's what we need to get there.
where'd you go? Oh, in Logan. Okay. We won't hold that against you. So I actually have something on that too. So were you guys all pretty good on that? So one of the things too that we discussed, and I visited this with Miss Barrett, is currently if you're a senior, 7th and 8th period as you're a senior, those kids traditionally get to go on what's known as a work, right? Here's the other thing a lot of people don't understand. For your son or daughter to graduate in the state of Texas on a foundation, it's 23 credits. Do you know what we require at Spearman? Huh? We require locally 20. Yes. We require every junior to take the ACT. Every. We have CTE courses for our kids to try to get them in. But we're missing a piece. And that piece is what you said. It's the community. So with having the kids, and Pedro and I talked about this last night, the value of work. I knew when I didn't want to get out of school. Because what was happening during summer? Dad was waking me up, right? You're going to work with me for free. Lunch was not provided. Or it was those, what are those little cans of weenies? What are those? Yeah, you know you guys like them, right? They're good. So I didn't want to get out of school because I knew that's where I was going. So by having a day off, Monday, Friday, whatever that looks like, we want to also establish partnerships with the local community for our students to have intern with you. So that's another added piece of this. There's something secondary to this. I've had conversations with people about the Spearman ISD Community Partnership Program. That'll come back. There's a lot of big things right now. And so I want to start opening those conversations with business owners, with organizations about how can we support your business? How can you support the school? And likewise, one of the things that we can do is the work program, the mentor. Yes, ma'am.
Concerns, and I know that there's so it's really polarized. And if you're passionate one way or the other, that is great. Be respectful of the same thing. One concern, and I would say, Lance, to your comment, talking about what do people do on the holidays and the days off. As an employer, you know that the people that work for you that have young children are going to use more PTO those days. You know that leading up to that because you also see the school calendar. You as an employer make plans, and as an employee, you make plans accordingly. You fill in the gaps, right? Well, if you're not at school on Monday or Friday, you've got two very large employers and other financial industry in Spearman. Mondays and Fridays are their two busiest days of the week. You're going to have people that need to take off on those days. You're going to have more PTO requested on Mondays and Fridays than you will have any other day, because that's the day naturally that they will try to go take their kids to the orthodontist, schedule their dentist appointment. Those are the days that also put you in the biggest bind if you are shorthanded. So there's one concern. My other concern, extending your school calendar extends your standard custody agreement. So if you are familiar, if you've been through custody with kids, if you share first, third, fifth weekends of the month, that extends the day that the non-custodial parent gets that. For some people, that may not matter. That may not make a hill of beans. For some kids, that could be detrimental to their mental health. It's very, very true. If you have high school girls that want to help on a Friday and watch kids, for some people, again, it's still a cost. But you would be surprised how many high school kids you will not find coming to work because they have a Friday off and they're exhausted, especially if they're at school till 4:30 and then have to go work out or go golf and try to squeeze all this into a day. They're going to be worn out. They're going to be exhausted. So, all that to say, please be respectful too if somebody does not share your either joy for this or concerns.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you saying that. That's the one thing that I think the more and more that we've kind of gone and had questions is the more how many points of view there are, right? Because things that are happening. So my kids are grown, right? They're not in the school system. The business office is going to work on a Friday. We're going to work at least a half a day. The other part of this that I haven't said are custodial staff. Where's Lexi at? Have you guys been busy lately? Okay, our attendance rate, okay, over the last month has plummeted because of flu A, flu B, and every other thing that's crawling. On Fridays, our custodial staff, now this is retroactive back to the C word, where we were hyper vigilant about sanitizing. So if we move in that direction too, this goes back to your cost savings, there will still be people in the building, but they're going to be busy disinfecting and sanitizing the school so that we can hopefully keep you less busy, right? And keep kids. That's one of those things that I was like, hey, I didn't think about that. Fridays we can do that. So every single one of you, when we ask for we are asking for general information. Prosper ISD just went 4-day school week. Bushland ISD just went 4-day school week. Bushland ISD, if I'm right, I can't remember if it was Bushland or Prosper, 0 town hall meeting. 0. School board just said, we're doing it, right? It's what we're going to do. That's how important this meeting is to us. That's how important this meeting is to me, to be able, when I walk in there on the 17th to these board members, say, here you go. This is how the community feels. These are their concerns. Here's our strategies for them. Some of them we can help, some of them we can't. But I do appreciate that point of view. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to have a question. I mean, what would you do? You know, I've been, they retire and you can't get nurses.
Yes.
So now for months and months, you know, I can use agency nurses. You know, we don't have teachers and we can't get them here. What other choice do we have?
Can you give me 2 minutes to be political? I want you to get a perspective from a superintendent about what's happening in Austin, Texas. So last week I went down to they had a legislative session. We had the opportunity, I got to meet with Caroline Fairley's chief of staff. I got to sit in our state senator, Kevin Sparks' office for 45 minutes and visit with him. The first word that came out of Mr. Sparks' mouth to me, we've got to get this school voucher thing passed and then we'll deal with everything else that you guys are wanting. I think their priorities are backwards. 2 years ago, they held $4.5 billion of teacher funding hostage because they didn't get their voucher passed. In my profession, when your own government doesn't support you, it's pretty easy to walk away. When you have 18 kindergartners, they're like cats, right? When you have 18 kindergartners, hey, I just got to, she's not here, so I can say this. I'm going to cover this thing up. My wife is a kindergarten teacher with 18. I've had a teacher superintendent conference for the last 122 days. I have heard the great, and then I have heard the other. At which point, I go, babe, they're 4. She don't care. There's 18 of them. But, and I don't want to speak. I was a classroom teacher. I actually joined late. So I was a firefighter for 13 years. I was director of environmental health and safety. I made good money. And then I became a teacher, right? Because I love it. And hopefully you guys see in my staff and in me how much we love your kids. We love your kids, but it's tough. It is extremely tough. It is scary. And when we have teachers who fight discipline issues in the class, I'm telling you, you have to be engaged in this. This does not work. I don't care if we go 4-day or 5-day. If you're not engaged, our public ed system is going to fail. I'm just going to tell you, that's just the honesty. So, record numbers of people not coming in. What did I hear the other day? There's 7.6 million jobs available in the United States that are unfilled. There's $1.7 trillion in student loan debt. Let's put people back to work. Let's make sure that they understand that they are supported and help ourselves because they're the ones who are going to educate. Yes, D-Raw, you don't get to talk.
Over the last couple of years to increase teacher retention,
Yes, sir.
as that's a huge problem.
Yes, sir.
Because if this becomes a norm for most school districts, at that point, what makes it
Appealing.
to stay here and not go down the road if they go to a 4-day?
Great question. One of the things that's a byproduct of the C word was federal funding that came into the schools called ESSER money. And there was ESSER 1, 2, and 3. And we're talking about hundreds and thousands of dollars. Because what they knew is the federal government knew that what we had inadvertently done is we had just created a massive education gap for the kids within our schools. Because we kept them out of a school system for 11 or 12 months, some schools longer, right? Thankfully, Texas came back. And if we were all to be honest with ourselves, as you were sitting home because you couldn't go to work, it was very easy for your kids to be entertained other ways. Thankfully, up in the Panhandle, we go outside. We live away from each other. There's a massive gap. So the federal government gave us funds to be able to do that. The school board was very intelligent with that money. They could have done what 80% of the other schools did, and that's a rough number. Don't judge me on that. And went and bought buses and went and did all this other stuff with it. Our school board invested it in our teachers. So our teachers got retention bonuses. So when they came back, that money went directly to the teachers. So they actually started fighting the retention battle about 3 years ago. And that's kind of how they've done it. We've expanded how we've we're also one of the only school districts in the Panhandle where the majority of our teachers in high school and junior high have 2 conference periods. So there's a bunch of things that we do, but that's a great thing. If Bushland goes to, I told you, 27 schools in 1 year, 115 in the state of Texas. When we started looking at this, one of the things that we said is it pays to go in early because you kind of set the bar. Bushland went to a 4-day school week because they cannot compete with West Plains. Egg is not an issue. They can't compete with West Plains for teachers. They don't have the tax base that West Plains does. So one of the reasons that we've decided to kind of move into this direction is we want to be ahead of the game in the Panhandle, and we want to be as competitive as we can. I will tell you, there are other schools already looking at this. And what you're going to see is you're going to see a domino in the Panhandle. We're late to the game. We are extremely late to this, the Panhandle. Because traditionally what we've seen is we've had people grow up in Spearman and they go to West Texas A&M and they get their education degree and then they come back to Spearman. But I don't think he'd be mad if I said this. Jack Wilkerson graduated last year, right, from West Texas A&M. They asked everybody who was in his class to stand up who was in education, and I think there were 3 in the entire graduating class at West Texas A&M. Now that's 3 students trying to service the entire Panhandle. Now go back to the other question. Can if you want me to, but I don't have a sign that says $25,000 sign on this. I can't compete with Dallas and Fort Worth. And if I was 22, 23 years old and you told me, hey, you want to work in Dallas or you want to work in Spearman, I would have gone to Spearman. So I'm a small town boy. But so that's kind of what we've done in the past, right? We've looked at, hey, let's pass the funds to the teachers. The hardest thing for me as a superintendent, and this is, I don't mind saying this, but this Christmas, my staff, they were blessed for 3 years. That money ran out in August. So when I had a Christmas party and told my staff, thank you for what you do in the battles that you fight every day, I didn't have anything in my hand to give them. That was tough. That was tough to keep them. So now I advocate on behalf of them. Can we get parent engagement? Can we get people in this community involved back in the school? Can Spearman ISD be what Spearman ISD needs to be for this community? And not worry about our Western friends or our Eastern friends or whoever. Let's be who we are. And let's take care of our community. And that's why we're trying to represent with the 4-day school week. It's one of those options. Yes, sir. Pedro. D-Roll, sorry. D-Roll. Go ahead. I'm not quite sure, but let's do it.
Mr. Lakeman, you said that with the state of Texas,
Yes, sir.
never class sexual harassment. So when you say parents need to step up, parents, these are your kids. You ask questions. Your students' involvement, your students' education. Now, put your role in there. I don't want to have students that I'm here to teach your child. I'm not here to raise your child. We need to do something to put some structure, some strictures, boundaries to these kids. Keep their phones away from them. I don't want to have to battle phones in class. And that was ridiculous to have to do that. So parents, bottom of my heart, I'm going to ask you, step up, do your part.
Mr. Lehman,
Yes, sir.
yesterday, you had a job where you had to complete 40 hours in a week. And they gave you the option to get it done in 5 days or 4 days. And you said, I'd rather get it done in 4 days. Get it out of the way quicker. Right?
Yes, sir.
All right. The state requires school districts to hit the 75,600 minute mark.
Yes, sir.
We're considering this option of starting at 7:30 to 4:05 for the 4-day week. Why not consider this option of keeping a 5-day and starting at that school time? Because that would reduce, instead of 36 weeks of a school year, it could cut down to 34 weeks. Save cost on school buses running for 2 weeks. Cost cafeteria, get staff members, save money there. Because the teachers are still going to be paid the same salary, shorter work schedule, and a longer summer break to enjoy their family time. Why not consider that option of the 5 days, start at 7:30 and 4 o'clock?
That's a great question. And that is really a viable question, because really what we get to do is there's options, right? And so part of the conversation, and that was always the toughest thing coming in here, of saying, it'd be easier if I just put up a 4-day calendar and tried to defend it, but I'm not going to develop something that's not supported, that I don't have feedback from. And so that's the reason we're having these conversations. That's the reason that I bring up that we've seen everything from people going 5 days a week for the first 6 weeks. And then at the end, we've seen everything from they start at the very beginning to 4 days. We've seen some to where it's intermittent, right? Really what we would have to do if the board chose to do it is those committees and those campuses to develop a calendar that best reflects the community of that. So could we traditionally do that in a 36-week? Absolutely, we could do that. That's one of those options that we could look at as well. 5-day school week. So when we look at teacher retention, so remember the number one objective of this is how do we retain and recruit teachers, right? If I'm a teacher and I'm looking and you've got a hiring poster on there and you say, hey, I'm going to increase the time that you work per day. You're going to work 5 days a week, but you get off 2 weeks earlier. Or the time's going to stay the same, but you only work 4 days a week, but longer school year. Traditionally, yeah. So a teacher's contract. So the state of Texas says when this school board member approves a teacher contract, it's a 10-month, 187-day contract. What we've done is there's 182 days, right? So in 10 months, 182 days. So by reducing that and going to that, what we see is teacher contracts are still, remember, school days, kids are in 161 days. Teachers are mandated to have a minimum of 10 days professional development. So their total number of days worked is reduced and actually equates more than your 2 weeks of staying with longer time.
Is if making us work longer, but you get 2 days off. Nobody goes to any other workplace and says, why don't we just pay you a little bit less, but you do more work? Because explain to them how we get paid. How is that contract? Because I've heard a lot of people come up to me before asking, well, you get a free summer. That's not true. Can you explain that, please?
Yes. So when we were talking about, if you go on, so it's important that I go back to here. So when we talk about school funding, the last adaptation to school funding was done in 2019. So if you look at the rate of inflation, schools are being funded today at the same equivalent as they were in 2015. 2015. The scale that we have, the teacher minimum scale, salary scale, which by the way, Spearman is about $7,000 higher than the state minimum to be competitive. That goes back to one of your questions. So let's say you take a year zero. They're on a 10-month contract, okay? Let's say it's $40,000. That $40,000 is broken up into 12 months. So they're getting 12 months of pay for 10 months of work, right? So I look at that and I'm like, well, that's pretty sweet, right? But whenever you bring that down to the daily rate of what they actually make per day for their salary, it's way under. It's the same thing as me when I try to hire a paraprofessional, right? Those people who are most important in helping in our pre-K, and I look at them and I'm like, man, what a difference 8 years makes. Like if you would have said, hey, you're making $13 an hour, I would have been like, yes, right? But $13 an hour to someone who only has to survive 365 days off of 182 days salary at $13 an hour, extremely tough. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I think that's part A of the equation. Part A of the equation is, do teachers deserve a raise? If you break down their hourly rate for what they do, right? Yes. Yeah. So, and God bless what they do. The right people get in this profession for the right reasons. Okay. They didn't enter this. People used to talk, Coach Lozano is up there. So I coached 3 varsity sports. I was a football coach, a wrestling coach, and then also a track coach. I started in June coaching and I ended in May coaching. In total for the coaching, which was every weekend in the nights, I made $7,000 a year. You don't get into this business because the right people don't get in this business because of the money. But it does not change the fact that teachers are underpaid. But I can tell you, I can pay these teachers $100,000 and we continue to have classroom disruptions and classroom behaviors. Money's not going to matter. So what does that mean and why is it important that you're here? Is that we can sit here 4 days are not going to solve the problem of everything that's happening in Spearman ISD and teacher retention. But a community that comes together, talks together, supports each other, loves on each other, and holds their kids accountable along with providing this, that's how you retain teachers. Sorry, this was a lottery system. You only get to get one.
I'm sure what I was going to bring this up or not. Parents, these teachers are being kids.
Yes, sir.
It's good to be disciplined.
Yes, sir. I agree. Thank you. You know, it would be really easy for me in my position to look back and say, what went wrong? It'd be really easy, but that's not my walk to look back and examine on. And I'm going to let them own their successes and their mistakes. And mine starts now. And that's what I ask from the community, right? I'm going to be as transparent as I can with you. I'm not going to hide anything from you. I will, here's my promise to you, I'm going to screw something up. I'm going to screw something up. I'm going to say something stupid. I will act out of emotion sometime. Okay? I'm just human. I'm going to make a mistake. Okay? But I will be held responsible for what I do to this community. And there was a great question. I don't have anything tying me to Spearman, Texas. My kids are gone. But I will tell you what ties me to Spearman, Texas. Is your kids and my staff. That's why I'm still here. And that's the reason that I want to stay, is because of what this, when I came to interview this, Mr. Batten was there and some of the school board members. Part of the reason that I came to Spearman was because it reminded me so much of my hometown. Now, you're not as wealthy as Denver City, but the amount of support from that community in that school district when I was in school was unbelievable. And this school district does unbelievable things with kids that, if you were to look at the book, shouldn't be doing unbelievable things. You look at that low socioeconomic number up there, 70-some-odd%. Statistics should show you that those kids aren't going to be successful, right? Because they don't have the tools. They don't have it. You know what? We're not going to listen to that stuff. We're going to educate those kids. We're going to push them. We're going to increase the rigor, and we're going to hold them accountable in the classroom. So that's one of those things too, is I own my leadership, and I will be accountable to you for it. And at any point in time, this community and I are going separate. We will go separate, and I will love Spearman at that point in time, because you guys have a piece of my professional heart and my family's heart. My son graduated from here. So I want to give you a little feedback. This may also help with some of the, what else are we doing to retain teachers? So we have something that a lot of school districts don't have. And her head's big enough, okay? But I really got to brag on Miss Ramon and what she does for our school community. And we've added more to that. Because the state of Texas has given us, because of a teacher shortage, has given us the opportunity to hire quote unquote uncertified teachers. I want to clarify. They may be uncertified, but they are degreed. They are educators. They have been professionals in whatever field that they are in. They made the sacrifice to go to a 4-year school as well. And now they're making another sacrifice to spend about $8,000 to $10,000 more to get a piece of paper that says they're certified in the state of Texas. And they have to pay for each test. They have to pay for each program. And they're doing this because they're trying to serve our community. So I'm a little abrasive to this because I have 3 college degrees and I'm an alternative certified teacher with a degree in general studies. So I stand up for our alt cert teachers because I know what it's like to hold down a full-time job and still have to go to school just so you can maintain your job. But one of the things that we're doing is, how do we support them? It's one thing for them to come in and ask us, hey, do you need some help? It's another thing for us to go to them and say, hey, this is a financial burden on you. This is a time burden on you. What can we do to help you? And so that's what we've done this year as well with our teacher retention and recruitment. And our, what do we even call that? Alternative certification cohort support, something like that. So I would encourage you. I think we've kind of found a good landing spot, unless there's something that hasn't been asked or said or addressed. I think we've kind of found a natural place to land the plane. I don't want to go to the board without that. I want to be able to present your opinion to them. And so one of the things that I'm going to request of you as we end tonight is over here on the right, the red sheets that you see, and they're all along the wall right here. There's a little QR code. If you're a parent of a student in Spearman ISD, if you will click on that QR code, it's going to take you to a survey, okay? If you are a community member over here on the blue, you don't have a student in Spearman ISD, or your kids have graduated, right? And now you're just grandma or whatever. If you don't mind, if you would click on that same exact survey, but that will give us some input tonight. It's a chance for you to actually voice your opinion. I believe there is a yes, no on there. Am I correct? There's a yes, no on there for you. So we will tally those for you. And then I will collect all of that information and present that to the board on the 17th. So thank you again for everything you've done. I would encourage you, continue to do what you're doing, because this is what changes Spearman ISD. And I don't know if we need to just start having town halls all the time to get you here. I like it. I like the questions, and I like the support of our community. So thank you very much. We appreciate it. Yes. So one of the questions was, will the results be public? So what we're going to do, so for those who weren't here tonight, so the information that we have both in English and Spanish, we will get that posted on our website with the link to that. And then as we start to develop those results, we will put that up there as well. Yes, sir. Great question. Thank you.